Darkness, a sudden tunnel, bleak and deep, blind to the joy of the morning sun. Trees reach higher to sirens of uncertain skies for a future in which we can all breathe together. Our mother wants us to be free, but she reminds us of our duty to those who chipped away the 2 large stones blocking yesterday,
Good poem.
who toiled to lay track to destinations we could not reach by ourselves. But no cars on this train are reserved. Nothing is reserved. But now, and now rushes past you an explosion of autumn bliss, daring you to dance in the glory of her possibilities. Failure dims, yet strengthens resolve to forever remaining open to the light. The light, the light. I probably won't.
No, I think I was. So I'm trying to break and deep right to the joy of the morning sun. Feel the child to silence and the skis for future in the future. You can use the
Oh. The last 3, 4.
So this one, right?
Yeah.
ここ行きあるんだろう。
あ、いいです。これお願いします。
はい。これ。はい。
いいよ。いいよ。
はい。
あ、ありがとう。
500円のバッグです。
Thank you very much.
万が一漏れた場合にすぐ気がつくようにつけた匂いは玉ねぎ。
Poster of her in my room, but then when I moved,それは東京でやったかじゃないかです。
ローカルですね。
ローカルですね。
Thank you.
Thank you, ありがとう。
どうもありがとうございました。
Yeah. Liberty Tower.
種類はないでしょうからね。カード外国はカード
彼それもやったことない。
ないの。旧歯科生。今年はいろいろと問題があった年だね。
This year maybe you have many problems.
The professor of medicine.
で、物事を処理する鋭い才能がある。
About your characteristics, you have a good sense. If you have any problems in front of you, you usually use your sense to solve that. So you have many friends, and you're a friendly guy. Has like steps already, like templates. You are not those type of person. You are like using your imagination and creativity to do it.
頭の働きもよく回転も早いけど決断力がない。
Oh, have a lack of decision skills. You are very imaginative and you are smart, but when it comes to make a decision,
This is wonderful.
OK、アクション。はい。
And to the king. Cool. Cheese, fromage. No light came on, Kunio, but it's working. Tree in the sky keeps.
ものすごい分厚い本が書いたんですけど、なかなか上げられるような値段にならない。
Thank you all very much. It's a pleasure to be here today with a very talented group. Maybe the best way we can just go around and each person can just introduce themselves and say what they want to get out of today's lecture. We're very lucky in that it's a small group most of us speak English better than me, but we do have Koto Mamrita here from the room of the factory, and he can help with any translation. So why don't we start with Kotaro and go over?
Let me just translate.
But don't be afraid, because I know especially in law there's some language that can be technical. So please feel free to say it in Japanese, and we'll try to figure out an answer.
So hi guys, my name is Kotaro. I live in Boston for like around 10 years, studying there, and then I started a company with people here, Natsu and John, and another worker. Today I think I wanna hear some interesting story from John, and then we will maybe some good place to eat hamburgers in Boston, or maybe a good place to hang out.
Yes.
So I'm pretty excited.
こんにちは。My name is I work at the Fujitsu Limited. Almost 40 years I worked at the Fujitsu, and mainly in the human development field. And now, and from 10 years ago, I am in charge of the e-learning content development. And also, I attended to the Sakai sensei. Professor Sakai, almost 3 years. And I enjoy. Sorry, I never use English in my field.
Your English is outstanding. It's really good. Really good. Yes.
I'm interested about following interesting information from you and also the other peoples. I will enjoy this time. Thank you very much.
Okay, my name is Sakai. I am a professor of Meiji University.
Yes.
I'm interested in the healthy state of human and organization and society.
And also, of course, you're an esteemed academic because of your scholarship. So maybe even a separate category here would be academics. Also very important. So maybe both business and then also in the teaching and training. You also studied law or also physics as well?
Yes, yes.
So both law and physics.
My specialty is physics. Not law.
Not law. Well, so we're going to have to talk about law a little bit, huh?
I'm Hideo Ogura. I'm a lawyer from 21 years ago and have a course at Chuo University and Meiji University. Specialized in intellectual property law and information technology law. Recently, I sued to the legendary pictures on Godzilla's pictures.
My name is Minatsu, and I'm a friend with like Jonasan, and I'm artist.
It's her fault.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm an artist and also art therapist. I'm teaching in the Tohoku Art and Design University. And actually, like I met Jonasan already almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I think he helped me. No, that time I'm already so short, but I'm adult already. So like I met him really like strange like the happening, and he helped me a lot actually like that's why I graduated. I had graduated in US in university. So that's a so long story. I cannot tell now. But he because of why he is now here, I wanted to like you guys to introduce this person, really like unique and rare and like strange guy. Yeah, and my English really horrible, but I can speak English in front of him. It's okay because he can guess, and I can guess what he's talking also. So we are strange communication style, but it's okay. Like he gave me a lot of courage, and so I'm so happy to like introduce everyone to this one. So thank you very much, Sagai sensei.
Thank you very much. Well, and Minatsu is very humble, maybe a little bit Japanese way, but her English is phenomenal. You don't get 2 master's degree in universities in America without outstanding English. So, So in terms of the introduction, I'm Jonathan Messinger. I'm an attorney in Boston, in Massachusetts, USA. I also practice law in New York, so I've done the exams in both locations. I studied in Boston, and I went to the same undergraduate college as Minatsu, Lesley University, which is there next to Harvard University. Lesley and Harvard are probably the 2 top teaching universities in the United States of America, if not the world. The 2 maybe leaders that Minatsu has worked with are Howard Gardner. He's at the Harvard University's Graduate School of Education. And if I'm talking too fast, just stop me, please. Stop. I notice, of course, too, Dr. Sakai, you have a note there from Noam Chomsky at MIT, which is incredible. Noam is one of the leading creative minds, maybe on the planet Earth. I've had the great honor to work with Noam a couple times. I was the Master of Ceremonies at an event last year, and he was our honoree, our featured speaker. So I'll have to send you a photo. I have some video from that we can share later.
Or video?
Yeah, there's a video of his speech. I know I'm a little bit off topic, but Noam is a hero of mine, really talented guy, along with Howard Zinn, also amazing. But in the context of this theory, which Minatsu is working with, including art and healing art therapy concepts, and also teaching it to the students, currently at Tohoku University in Yamagata. At that time, Howard Gardner did something called multiple intelligence theory, so multiple intelligence theory, we're all familiar, of course, with the concept of IQ. In English, we would say intelligence quotient. So it's a calculus whereby you figure out how smart someone is. Howard Gardner said, okay, fine, but in the real world, practicing business, practicing law, academics, etc., maybe this measurement is not okay. So he proposed 8 additional forms of intelligence, much like the Fujitsu on its side there. 8 forms of multiple intelligence. Now these include different ways of thinking and learning, different modalities. So as an example of these 8, and I would encourage everyone to read it, it's quite interesting, and Minatsu is bringing Howard Gardner's work here to Japan, maybe she can have him come. Genius guy, he's like a Chomsky or probably like Dr. Sakai, very smart, talented in many ways. They include, for example, kinesthetic communication, which is movement. So not just reading in the book, but being able to move. Athletics is one. Okay, so like good at baseball in the outfield. We both played outfield for baseball, right? Another example is interpersonal skills, so communicating with others. So the basic concept, and you use this in your work, I'm sure, interpersonal is between people, intrapersonal. Intrapersonal is like, it's the same way like internet, intranet. So internet is out, broadcasting out. Intranet is probably common in terms of development, working with people in terms of organizations and business. It's within. So one thought I had is if maybe a Japanese way could inspire this idea, the intrapersonal. because maybe in the US style, we're very out, but not enough in. It's very important to focus on the internal as well as the external, and it's an important lesson. And there are others, for example, naturalistic, which is dealing with nature, and I could go on, but you know, so the okay. So since that time, Howard Gardner had another work which Minatsu has been involved with at Harvard University, which is called Project Zero. This is a fascinating concept. What it is using education, and Minatsu can help explain it better than me, as it applies to art. And Minatsu had a great idea, which was following the tsunami, which was here in Japan, the natural disaster. She was looking to expand, and has been, this concept with her students. Because she found many students would come, and they're studying art, Tohoku, Art and Design University. However, maybe they need to heal as well. Okay, so Project Zero, and that's an ongoing work, and Minatsu is very active with Harvard University and Howard Gardner with that. Now, Gardner's most recent concept is this one. Good work, good work. No. The concept at first seems very simple, but often, if you look maybe like the concept of maybe yin and yang, these don't always work harmoniously. Good is often like, you know, happiness or fun or maybe a hug. But work often is very difficult. Long hours at the office, you know, working your way up, climbing, some say climbing the ladder, we would say in English. And often work is about also money. So we might say no yen, no grin. So the interplay between these concepts is very important, especially in a society which now is so interdependent. So if we look at, for example, environment, or we look at the way the world works, what someone does on one side of the world impacts the other side. I could boil it down to one word in English, as I've been reading his theory, and I'm learning more about it through Minatsu. The word I would use is this, above all. Empathy. That's the most important. How can one be engaged in business and still help the larger society? In the working way, can you support both better business and a healthier society and a healthier human relationships? So in terms of the organization of your team and your management, can you cooperate? Can you get along well and help? Can you help? Well, in terms of empathy, there was a case study here which was fascinating. If you go on the website of Good Work, which I did, and I read some, one was, there was a woman who was a therapist, and there was a young fellow who was from South America. He didn't have the proper legal documents. So what happened is the fellow who immigrated and didn't have the proper paperwork, he drowned in the river. I believe El Salvador, but it was Central America, below USA. But he drowned, it was actually in the Charles River in Cambridge. It's a few years ago. So she was a very sensitive and emotional person working. And so when he passed away, she had to find out where is his family, how do we communicate, how do we take his body back so he can go home to be with his people. And in the case study that was written, the question, again, dealing with empathy, was how do you balance it so that it's not too much empathy? Where do you find that balance? So, for example, she was very emotional and did everything she could, but did she have to actually go and bring the body back, contact the family, how to contact the family, etc.? And this is a common problem in all of our business work. Okay? In law, for example, in the US, we have what's called, it's from the Latin, if anyone speaks Latin, pro bono, often called pro bono publico, which is for the good of the public. Shortened, pro bono. So, applying this to law,
Oh, yeah, okay.
okay,
Is this coming from law or?
yes, this is from law.
あ、それこれを
So maybe the connection in some ways between good work theory and the law,
Okay, just,
as an example.
Okay. And could you talk about pro bono? What is it?
Sure. So when you're licensed to practice law in the U.S., and please jump in at any point on this, it's done by jurisdiction. Jurisdiction means each state has its own rules, its own bar exam. So one of the requirements, of course, is to continue your legal education. So you have to go to seminars and courses each year, a certain number of academic hours. Another requirement in many jurisdictions is that you complete pro bono work. Pro bono is work you do without compensation,
So pro bono
so you're not paid.
volunteer?
Yes. Do you have this in Japan as well?
Yes. Yeah.
And what is it called in Japanese?
プロボノって言うんです
Same
ね。
thing.
プロボノって言って。
This one really, the concept is not from US, not from Japan. It's a Roman idea, way back. So you had the Greeks and then the Romans. The Romans said pro bono. So those in power should use a certain amount of empathy and support for others in the community. The same way, I'm sure, like a large business, say Fujitsu, for example, they would do probably a certain amount of charity work in the community. Maybe similar. When I was thinking about good work, what I did, which I often do, and maybe this is the same way with law, you break it down, or physics, right? Break it down into its parts. So the first one, if we can have a short discussion about each of these concepts. So good, and maybe applying Gardner to our work, and then maybe less important, okay, because it's not as universal, but we can talk specifically about law. So first, the concept of good, I was curious, not just with Gardner, but how it would apply to each of our lives. So maybe we can talk briefly about that. Cooperation,
協力、
harmony,
ハーモ
making the world a better place.
ニー、世界を良くするこ
So what do you think about good? What are some concepts that would be collective for us?
Most I think that your was the same word cooperation.
Hmm. Cooperation, okay. Excellent. Anything else you can think of? What about a concept unique to Japan? Maybe we don't even have it in US, but it's we might say we might say, if I can coin a word, J-centric. Centric meaning specific to this category, so maybe Japan-centric.
改善
How do you spell it?
K-A-I-Z-E-N. There is something already. The original product already exists. But how can we make it better, more so?
Maybe Dr. Sakai. Can you explain Moore's Law for those that don't know?
I think I want other person to say
Ah,
this
ah,
because I already
Japanese
almost gave
maybe?
them an answer.
わきまえ。
Oh, oh,
わ
oh,
きまえ。
わきまえ。
わきま
わきまえ。 Okay, yeah, this is like part of the Japanese culture, I would say. Wakimae is you understand that your position well.
Yeah.
Therefore, you know what to do.
So like with my brain, it goes to some places. So maybe you know this one of my favorite movies of all time. Of course, most of the best movies are Japanese, right? I mean, Kurosawa, etc. I mean, you like Star Wars is
大好
just
きな映画がありまして。
Star Wars just Kurosawa done differently, please.
もちろん
But wakime, the first thing I think of is a scene from one of my all-time favorite movies. Maybe you know, Kunio, maybe you know. This one. Did anyone see this movie? You saw it?
ラーメンの
You saw it, Kunio? So Kunio, maybe you can explain the...
すごい古い映画。
Kotaro's example of wakame made me think of this. There's a brilliant scene, you know the French restaurant scene, the French restaurant, and they're all around the long boardroom table, and they don't speak French, right? It'd be me in Japan, same way. I don't know. So they're each looking at the menu, and they and then the next guy, okay, because the boss, the next guy, okay, like this, and it goes all the way around. And at the very end, as you go all the way around the table, there's one young guy who's new. You know, he's like, we might say in English, peon, like the lowest guy, you know, new one. Like intern, right? So the lowest guy, and he speaks French, you know, but he's young, he has to respect everything, and he's torn. Can I say it? Can I not? What do I do? So he, bonjour, speaking in French, and he orders everything like this one, and each guy under the table you see, and it's like kick, and they go all the way back around, and then each guy says, okay, I'll have what this guy has, and it goes all the way back around. Anyway, if you have a chance, great film, and it's Japanese. It's one of my favorite movies. Can we think of?
他に何かあれは。
もったいない。
もったいない。
英語になってますね。
なってますね。
もったいない。
あの人が言い始めて、女の人ですよね。
ノーベルフラッシュいただい
ああ、そうですよね。なんていうかな、
もったいない。
大きいの小さいのと流すところでしょうね。
This is I think this is very
I was thinking in English some concepts as you said it, and I wrote one down. We always think of Japan, reduce, reuse, and recycle. Most of the best technologies in this regard are from Japan. You know, even like Germany or you go to France, often it came from Japan first. US, unfortunately, were very slow to come to this concept. What we're calling it now, the one word, is sustainability. This is an incredibly important concept in law, as well as business, as well as education. How can you make something that not only will last, but grow and shape as time comes? This is a good example, again, with as Minatsu calls the catch copy, shaping tomorrow with you. How do we sustain? Okay. In law, it's very important because of precedent. Separate discussion, but I'll just make a note for later. Common law versus civil law. And for those interested in law and application, as there's time, we can talk about that. But that also fits into this concept. What else? Maybe one more? One more? How about in law? What's a good law one? I could maybe say one in English and maybe explain in Japanese. So, you have in Japan sometimes the jury trial, right? Okay. So, a lot of what I do is trial law. So I often will have a jury. If it's a small case, 6, large case, 12. So you have the judge and the jury. The judge deals with the law, but the jury deals with the facts. And ultimately, the judge decides what gets in, but the jury decides the result, the verdict. Okay, so the final answer is that. And one of the most interesting parts, which you have, I think, in Japan as well, and maybe you can explain, is this idea of examination.
Questions? Yeah. So, you want to say you want facts or?
Well, I said too much. Let me distill or simplify. Communicating, but even better, is understanding. Yes? No. In other words, every business, every vocation has slang or specific language, okay? And sometimes it's very difficult to communicate. One example in terms of geography, here in Japan we may say prefecture. In my state we might say county, like country without the extra letter. The same, but the terminology is different. And law is a perfect example of this. I often joke, and hopefully this isn't offensive, but I often joke that lawyers take a simple concept, make it complicated, and then charge a lot of money. Another great example of understanding is what Kotaro just said. He gave the example of the lunch, and maybe Dr. Sakai orders one dish, $10, maybe the next guy should only go 8. I get it. Okay, so for a guy who doesn't understand Japanese well, I get the concept. So this idea of understanding is good. It's a foundation, because without the understanding, you can't move to the next step. Wonderful. So let's move on to another section of good work, which is work. And I can tell you my notes, maybe we can use as a starting point. So when I think of work, I think about supporting ourselves and supporting our families and our communities. Another big one for me, and I've worked many types of jobs as a youth, and I've been very lucky in that regard. I think about connecting clients or customers and products. And this can be goods. For example, if you're buying a printer, it can be goods. It can be learning itself. I mean, this incredible concept of getting it and learning. It can be services, okay? It can be art. All of these are great examples. And then what we would say, I call it my way, I call it the 3 S's, or S maybe cubed in more of a mathematical way. What this is sales. And when you think of it, we're all in sales. Every person who works, we're all at the end of the day, we're selling. Whether we sell a product, whether we sell learning and the e-learning, whether we sell, look, you can get it, you can understand physics, we're going to work you hard, you're going to study hard, you can get it, okay? Or management, these complex forms of companies, you can understand. Or law, or art. We're all salespeople, really, at the end of the day, okay? Which is okay. Also, services. All of us are providing a service. If it's translation, if it's IT, if it's coding, learning, and down the line, right? Then lastly, solutions. So at some point, expertise and skill matters. If someone comes with an intellectual property problem to you, you're going to have to do all 3 of these to solve the job. If you don't, they go to the next guy, yeah? Okay, so I'm curious about Japanese working and what it's about. So let's try to find some more concepts here that we can learn. You know, I was reading the Japanese Constitution in preparation for this talk in an English version. And when I was reading Articles 25 and 27, and help me here, just a quick note. In Article 20, let me see. And I have a lot of notes, but so inside it says in the Japanese Constitution, Article 25, we all know that number, okay. It says the wholesome and cultured life. Wholesome and cultured life. So how might we say decent work in Japanese?
Decent work in Japanese.
This concept.
Motomodana? Decent work and ethic is maybe like
Ethics.
like connect.
Ethics. Okay.
So, because like I every time remember, he said he's really concentrated about ethic for the
Ethics.
next future.
So maybe much like the concept here, what you do now will have an impact the next time. So maybe if you use the small instead of the big, then this helps the next generation.
Yeah.
Very interesting. What I think of in this context too is what we might call interdependence. Well, I love anything inter, obviously. I mean, I guess you know that now. Interdependence. So not independence like freedom. Interdependence. So what it means, of course, is that this makes a difference for everybody. So even if you use the small one, it's going to impact everyone else. We have to cooperate. The world is small.
But that's a similar word for like a butterfly effect.
Yes.
Pay forward と思い出した。
Pay for.
Ah,
I
yes.
like that.
Excellent. This is a good one.
Maybe we're gonna put the phrase from Matrix.
Matrix?
Sure.
I know Kung Fu. I was just joking. I'm joking. I thought we were gonna just talk about movies.
No.
Another great movie, which Kotaro likes. This one is Matrix.
Yeah, Matrix. Yeah, we
Actually, worth seeing. Very interesting philosophy inside. I'm going to give an example that happened yesterday. Okay, a short one. And I may have to embarrass Kotaro because it's about him. So yesterday, we were in Osaka, and we were running late for the train to come down. And we've been traveling a lot, not much sleep. He's probably sick of me, dragging an American guy around, sticking him in hotels, taking away from his work. But he's been strong. And we were running late. And Kotaro stopped on the subway train. There was a woman who was trying to carry her bag down the stairs, and she was old. Even though we were running late, even though Kotaro was exhausted, he stopped. And he stopped and helped the woman with her heavy bag down the steps. No hesitation, no analysis of impact on potentially being late. He just did it. To me, this really made me think about good work. In my training as a youth, I was a Boy Scout. I don't know if you have that. Do you have the top?
Same word.
Do you have the top one is Eagle?
Eagle, yeah.
I got it. Okay. So the motto is be prepared. So in this concept, in the Boy Scouts, our language for what Kotaro did yesterday. Now Kotaro is in some way a hero. A small hero, but he's a hero.
Maybe big.
Well, maybe big hero. Maybe big ego, big hero, right? But we would say this in English. It's called do a good turn, which is a little bit of a strange word in this context, daily.
これ多分日本語でも訳す1日1善とかになるんですか
So do, and we call it the turn. But turn in this context also means literally, like Kotaro, he's going there, he's running late up. He goes out of his way, helps, and then returns to his work. So, to me, I think also about vision. Okay, you have to be able to see more than just in the book. You have to be able to see what's happening around. And think of the larger impact of decisions that are made.
So which one is important? Like you can't even have the same vision in the same time, right?
Well, in my case, I can because I'm nearsighted in one eye and farsighted in the other.
It depends
But
on the
that's
people. Like there's two people, like one people are good at looking into it, or another people has.
It's a great question. So to take your client, and this is an example of intellectual property in France, which is done by our colleague. In horse racing, you have horse racing in Japan.
Yes.
You can draw it better than me, Kotaro, but you know this one. So the horse has what are called blinders. So the horse, here's the track. The horse can only see in front. That's it. In business, in doing good work, no good.
Why?
The reason why is if you don't see around, you don't get new ideas. We call this in English, it's called peripheral. So in other words, can you see to the side? Can you see up and down? The reason it's so important is with innovation. And you see this all the time with innovation and IT, intellectual property work. You have to shape tomorrow. Or as they say, I think Hitachi, theirs is, they talk about next. What's coming down the road? What's coming down the path? This is critical, in my estimation, as I understand good work. Specific point also which relates to good work as we get into law. So these are all great ideas. I'm going to just give us a little space here. Okay? Although you have a photo so I can remember these. Okay, thank you. I want to study this and learn. We'll keep this because it's very important. Okay.
In the book, the Howard Gardner talks about what is good, what is bad, what is bad work, what is good work, what makes the difference. 病院、製薬関係の会社はグッドウォークを何の意識もしないでも行っているというのがまずあります。でもちろん理由は後ほどご説明します。マイナス is an advertisement company、広告会社マイナスの方。すべてではないですけど、all of them but food company、restaurants or sometimes supermarkets、counted in the book is described as a bad work. Then why? In good work, these three categories, doctors, mediciners, sponsors, are looking at the same direction, and then this good way they're leading their minds, which is they, この3人は全員 wants to help people. 例えば誰か患者がいたら、この3人は全員この人を救うために動くということがあります。ドクターはそうだし、メディシンの薬を作る人もそうだし、スポンサーの会社もこの人を救うためのじゃあお金を出している。それぞれは技術を出しているということで目標が同じで、それを達成したいという理由も同じです。これが、本に出てくる例の一つで、もう一つが、じゃあこれマイナスはどうかというと、for example, advertisement company, maybe sponsor as well, people who give money, and also directors. OK. そうじゃあ映画とかの広告会社をちょっと思い浮かべてください。ディレクターとスポンサーが存在するとします。ディレクターはアーティストですから、ディレクター is counted as an artist, so he wants to make what he wants. ディレクターというのは自分の表現をしたい。エクスプレスですね。自分の表現方法があって、自分の表現したいものがあって、それを表現したいというのがディレクターのやりたいことです。で、スポンサーは何かというと、スポンサーは自社の製品の宣伝をしたいということがあります。スポンサー wants to advertise their product. Therefore, they want to increase their sales. So, unlike these three people, they are going to different direction. こちらの人たちと違って、この2人は違う方向をも向いてしまっています。それで、この2つがその結果何を得るかというのは分かりませんということで、本ではこの状態はバッドワークというふうに分類されるんですね。
Coherence だな。Coherent state.
Coherence.
Not coherent.
Versus non-coherence. Okay.
Then I will bring it back.
Sure.
これだけ補足として。
So then, probably the counter to coherence might be imbalance. Does that make sense?
For example, maybe take an example is good. For example, Jonathan, is there any example that Harvard University did as a good work recently?
Harvard University recently.
Maybe.
You mean like an education initiative?
For example, they built a new building. But who was the sponsor? Oh, the building you told me. The Harvard University, maybe like 2 or 3 years.
The law school, the new law school.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that can be a good example for a good work. Because the sponsor is the they were a graduate student from Harvard University. And then the students are going to use the building to study their knowledge. And then they want to build the building, and then they want them to study so they can get more knowledge in the future. So that's, I think that's a good example of.
So that might add another couple of categories down here, which could be community.
Maybe. Yeah, community.
And also
especially they were a graduate student from Harvard University, so this is really
architecture. One example I think we discussed is there's a project called the Solar Decathlon, which is done in Washington, D.C. And teams all over the world compete to build a zero-emission home, so totally off the grid, that gives energy back to the big grid.
What? I didn't get it.
Okay, so you know, like as you said, AC. Okay, or maybe
電源ですね。これ電源です。
gas, water. So it's a totally recycled house built from scratch. It's a competition among students, which one is the most efficient. And the top 10 are set up right in Washington, D.C. on the mall, which is that big lawn. You have Washington Monument here. So in this way, maybe combining community, architecture, physics, education, these types of concepts. These ideas work really well. One specific example, and most of the best concepts are coming from Japan, as you know, I mean in technology, architecture, etc. But in this specific context, and my brother is an architect, so that's why I was so interested. His team made the national finals in DC, so I was down there to see the buildings. So most people, you have a house, and then you have the solar panel like this on the roof. Maybe you can adjust, okay? The German team had the best concept. They took the photovoltaic panels and actually built it on the house itself, so that each was a solar panel. Top, sides, bottom, totally solar. So the conventional concept of just the top, or even adjustable, they took it totally out. They said, wow, what if we put it everywhere? And also, all the other homes were one story. Like we might say storage container, or like, you know, sometimes you have the truck traveling, this one, like this, just a box. But they said, why don't we make it 2 stories high? And why don't we make it so we can put them on top of each other, modules, and build and change the design. So sometimes, if I'm understanding what you're saying, Kotaro, hopefully, if the unity and the vision of the team is in harmony or coherence, as Dr. Sakai has mentioned, you can take it to the next step. You can come up with new concepts. Another example you gave earlier today is you now have an application for the iPad, which all the lawyers can check their work, how many hours they can work together as a team. Minatsu had a good example. You were teaching last week at your school. She said to the students, why don't you come up with a company concept and then make a pitch? And many of these ideas can work in the real world. I thought one of the best concepts, the students took old Daihatsu cars. I was explaining a little bit the old cars, and then turned it into a taxi service to get around in the mountainous. So one part of this, which I think is critical as well, is the importance of listening. Because with good listening, you can think. And this is important, because I think a lot of bad work, and I'm guilty of this as much as anyone. In law, of course, we talk a lot. So we would say in English, the expression is maybe too many cooks spoil the soup. Maybe we took it from the Japanese way, right? So one of the important ways to handle that, which I think the Japanese do better than anyone else on the earth, the reason, for example, that, and I have a bias, Toyota I think is the best car in the world. I have 3. I love the car, okay? the reason the Toyota quality is so high, the design plan is integrated, I would argue, in what Kotaro has described well as a good work way, a unity of vision and design. First, and extremely important, well, before is design, but manufacturing, I got to think of the order. There's 4 parts: distribution, and then there's retail sales, service. Those are among the main 4. So, from, we might say, from the factory to the showroom. So factory to showroom, and then the follow-up, the sustainability. How does the car continue to work? For example, my Toyota is always in miles. All of them have at least 170,000 plus miles, not kilometers, miles, all of it, because they're built so well. And this starts from the beginning of concept, of good work, and making it happen. So should we shift a little bit to law? How are we doing on time? Do we need a break?
I think we will have a break, but before break,
yeah.
How about asking people, is there any questions, and then we can start from there.
Perfect. Perfect. I have an idea, though. Maybe Kotaro stimulated my mind. Minatsu is one of the only people in the world. Maybe we don't even know how powerful this woman is. She has the O1 visa in the USA, but not just that, for an artist, for a real artist, I mean a painter. Minatsu, and stop me if I'm saying too much, but she was reading a magazine, a travel magazine, and saw an image in Austria, Stephanplatz in Vienna, you know, in Austria, in Europe, and she painted it. And her painting was so good, the head of the school just said, go there now. Go and paint. Here's the money, take it, go and paint. And she painted. And she painted all over the world, and she painted her way to the USA, and she got a master's degree in fine arts in Kansas, which is there in the center. This is here, USA. Kansas is here. Then she got another master's degree where I met her in Massachusetts, Boston, Cambridge, Lesley University. And her idea about art is that it should be used for healing. And we're talking about Howard Gardner. Another major mentor of Minatsu is Dr. McNiff, Sean McNiff. He's at Lesley University.
Johnson, we might run out of time.
No problem. So what I was going to say is, maybe in the concept of good work as it applies to international cooperation, this might be worth talking about, that's all.
You have to just ask him a question, alright?
Okay, because of today, it's like I wanted to show you, I want to introduce you to them.
Yes, yes.
Because maybe like I think because of the, like interdisciplinary way, something like we can to do together for maybe like good work, right? So how to combine?
So we know the definition of like good work. So
Good
everybody must be looking at the same direction.
Because of this is like global way, you know many like the country and like you know my concept that you said now, like the art. I think art can use for many way because of like Project Zero. For example, Project Zero theory is like eight intelligence, like all intelligence like relate with art, right? So maybe because of here, so like special people there, so I want to like something combine you to them for the future, like plan. So this is my question. What kind of can do?
Maybe for he's very famous in Japan, and he's
No.
a Japanese lawyer.
Yeah.
Jonathan is American lawyer. What can you guys do together? Is and then
Good
as a good work. I think it's the next keyword that we can talk about. For example, Dr. Sakai is in Meiji University. He likes coffee. He likes smoking. He likes alcohol too. He's American lawyer. What can you guys do together?
I love them all. Smoking only occasionally. Last
And
night
he
maybe.
is from Mr. Tora is from Fujitsu, developer guy. Fujitsu is a well-known company.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody knows it. Even like a kids. Oh, Fujitsu, yeah, I know. He's an American lawyer. What can you guys do together? Is there maybe an advanced theme that we can do next?
So maybe the way to handle that is, I can talk about a few case studies,
Maybe.
different projects that applying this to law. And I'm just learning myself about good work. But I have a similar philosophy in my approach. My trademark, and you know trademarks of course, is, you see it there on the card, is compassionate advocacy for a better world. And I think law is a powerful tool, but it often falls into the wrong hands, and maybe, as Kotaro was saying, the bad work style. I'm sure you see this too. It's a tough way to earn a living. A lot of people just want to move ahead, get money, stomp on anybody on the way. So how, in law, can we assist what Kotaro and Minatsu are saying as examples?
Maybe especially America is always very
Maybe one last word, short.
最後に休憩に行く前にまだちょっとずつ
Well, I was thinking of coherence. Dr. Sakai had a brilliant word there. I'm thinking too about momentum. This is another word in physics. So, how do we move forward? How do we harness that energy?
Well, there's a new guest coming right now, so maybe we take a break.
Take a break. Okay, sure. And speaking of Kunio, he brought up a good point in the last segment, which was this concept of decent work in addition to good work. Now, in a moment, I would like to introduce the new member of our team. But before we get there, in reading the Japanese Constitution, I found in Article 27 something very fascinating, which is the right to work. Guaranteed by law, correct? Yeah, the right to work. Very, very interesting. In our Constitution, we don't have this. Okay, so maybe please explain it to us, Yukuki, there from the definition.
Oh, in Japanese?
Yeah, yeah.
日本国憲法第3章にあり、勤労の権利と義務についての規定。すべての国民は勤労の権利を有し義務を負う。賃金、就業時間、休息その他の勤労条件に関する基準は法律でこれを定める。児童はこれを酷使してはならない。以上です。知らなかった。
So a fascinating idea. So in the concept of decent work, humane work, productive work, there's a lot of discussion actually. The reason I mentioned France, they've done studies that even though the French work less, they're very efficient and they get a lot done. Kotaro is an artist, Minatsu is an artist. Okay, so what we did is talk about good work as it applies to Japanese culture, American culture in general. And there were many interesting concepts which came up, especially in terms of using different products again, cooperation, teamwork, and so forth. Very interesting discussion. We of course have to add, we can't have life without this so important music. And of course great history here in Japan. And music is critical, both in Howard Gardner's work in multiple intelligence and in general. When you think about any advertising, product launches, any fine art, music is critical. So I thought at this time, Kotor, we could shift to the integration between good work as it applies to law. And you should know it's a very informal scenario. Feel free to ask questions and jump in anytime. We left at the break, Kotor was mentioning kind of a question and answer time if people had any questions. And Minatsu was talking about her connection in terms of healing art and her work in the US and here in Japan. So as the lawyer here, fellow lawyer, anything you wanted to ask or discuss in the context of good work and law?
What is a good law at lawyer's practice?
Good law?
Good work. What is a good work?
Good work.
This is a really good question. So in the context of Howard Gardner, for example, I think it would be a balance between interpersonal and intrapersonal, which are two of the 8 categories. The reason that this is so important, law, like many fields, you work too long, too much. You're often reading and putting together documents. And it's not a healthy life. So you have to figure out a way to have your inner balance, which then you can communicate to your clients, and you have a more successful practice. The other component, which we mentioned briefly the last time, is one of pro bono work, which is for the public good. This is volunteer work that lawyers do. And have that be a part of your practice. Is that okay that I say that too fast? Did it make sense?
Maybe everyone's saying so.
So maybe a balance of interpersonal and intrapersonal. Another big one is, and we talked a little bit about the hierarchy and structure and order in Japanese working, which is very valuable. So one way that this applies in US lawyering is mentorship. And I think this applies to other businesses as well. Sure, so mentorship, it's actually, there are 2 subcategories. One is the mentor. The other is the mentee. Some people would say teacher or master or boss, and then student. But this is a specific subset because the mentor and mentee are in the same industry. So it can apply in other organizational management contexts, e-learning, other business, etc. So whether we're at Fujitsu or we're singing soprano and someone is coming into the group, the more experienced member can support the newer member and both can improve. Now with this group, it's one of those situations where I don't have to say this, it's obvious, but a lot of folks don't understand the importance of two-way communication. The reason this is so important is some of the best learning happens in reverse. So for example, maybe I'm here and I'm talking. Who cares, right? I'm learning a lot more than maybe I'm sharing. So for example, today maybe I'm the mentor on good work and law, but maybe when I return to the US, I have many Japanese theories that I can share with my colleagues that may be more valuable than before I came. Another really big one, and I think this is important for the majority of the people, or if not everybody in this room, is, and this is true with every business, the use of technology. Technology is critical because when you're sharing new ideas and complex information, especially among many jurisdictions, and law can be that way, you need to be able to get the information quickly and effectively to your clients or to the public at large. You gave a great example earlier of this, and you missed this one, so I'll just mention it briefly. Your team at your law firm has an iPad application in which you can check billable hours and collaborate on different projects. This type of effort really helps everybody in the team. And again, for this particular group, you're very talented and you're very multidisciplinary. This doesn't apply to you, really. But I would say this is, and it's obvious, but have a life, have a hobby, do something outside the office. I think this is really, really important. I'd like to know maybe how you express in Japanese this type of a concept, but to have a balance. This part is very important. I think law is one of those professions where it's the most important, because sometimes in law you're producing an amazing document that, I mean, intellectual property is a great example. It's very technical, it's very difficult to get to the next level on a project, and you know you're brilliant, right? You know you just did this incredible document that you spent months painstaking research working, and you hand it in and it's like, I mean, you don't have that satisfaction often. So you have to find it. You have to find it. One of the best ways this has been expressed, I think, in modern philosophy is Joseph Campbell, whose most famous line, and there's a professor in Kyoto, actually here in Japan, Nakano, who does work on this, but it's called follow your bliss. So many of you are familiar with this concept. Don't be afraid to have fun, to enjoy. I mean, it can be fun. This is a pen. This is a weapon, really, right? I mean, writing it and then putting it in court. But also it can be fun. So, since I visited the Tokyo Tower in Nippon, I now use this in court all the time. I go into court and I have a very angry guy. I think one great example of this technique is Dr. Sakai. When I went to the bathroom on the last break, I had the card to come inside, but I have a terrible sense of direction, as Minatsu and Kotaro and many others know. I knew the room because it's colorful. This room is unique. So I think this plays in well to Howard Gardner, and that is one of creativity. And I would say don't be afraid to do it in law. I mean, law, for example, has a different energy than teaching or lecturing a class or running a business and managing a business or singing or art. But that doesn't mean you can't incorporate those concepts and methods. So move around, get outside the office, breathe, get a fresh perspective. Some of the good modern thinkers, I just read, for example, Steve Jobs' book, the guy who did Apple. Steve Jobs always did his business meeting, and by the way, he was very influenced by Japan. He came over here frequently. A lot of his concepts, he's a big Buddhist guy. Even the design of the Apple store was very much inspired by Japan. Even the color and the way the stuff works with the Apple phone. But what I found interesting in his work, whenever he had a big business meeting, he would go for a walk. And it would be, hard negotiation business, but you go for a walk, you're in a different environment, it changes it. So maybe one last to kind of stick with the Gardner idea of 8. I would say, and this has been mentioned in other ways today, but humaneness or humanity, put it in context, right? We often tell people in law, look, we're not the doctor, we're not saving a life. The sun will come up tomorrow, whether we win the case or not, right? There are exceptions, of course, but generally speaking, and I think this is part of Japanese thinking too, maybe, is be humble, give yourself a perspective. Of course you're powerful. I mean, this is a powerful group. These are some top thinkers in the world right here, okay? But at the same time, stay humble, keep it in context, and really listen and ask the right types of questions. So these are some ways in the context of law, maybe to approach. What do you think? What do you think about it?
そのグッズを入れるのはちょっとどうかなという感じ。
In Japan, probably a judge will tell you or they won't have a they will say in a different way, but they will see you as
So Shimbayashi American, get out. Okay, great time to mention something then in the context of law, which is slight difference in approach in legal philosophy. You have civil law based on code, and then you have common law, okay, which is based on precedent. And we won't go too far into law world, but a little bit can be fun. So code, Japan does it this way, as does France, as does Germany, as most of the world, okay, civil law. Make sense? Many of you know this already. Common law is from the British, the Commonwealth system. Common law says we look to the prior case to decide. Civil law says we look to the code. As a result, civil law could be said to have more of a structure. So maybe in the Japanese system you're describing, this type of pen is not good. Common law is maybe a little more flexible because you have both the judge and in many cases also the jury. So you have law decisions but also fact decisions, and you're allowed more creativity in your approach, especially in litigation, especially when you have an actual dispute between parties and you're trying to win. So this allows for good work, but it's also quite dangerous because if you're using this creativity in a way to hurt people, it's especially dangerous in a common law context. Okay, let me just give you an idea here. When I was thinking of good work and I was thinking of law, I'll just say briefly my definition of law and then let's maybe talk about what you all think. So I would say that law, in its simplest form as I see it, is a system of rules, and really it's designed with two primary functions. Does anyone want to tell me what they are or what they think they are? Two primary functions of law. For example, in Chinese law, which I studied, which is called Li, they call it the two handles theory. So it's like you're carrying two buckets. And in one bucket, and I think this is universal throughout the world. Okay, so one is, anybody?
Yeah, but Jonathan, does it going to connect to good works?
Yes, I think so. Okay, one is to maintain order. So as you said, Dr. Sakai, coherence. Okay? So keep the society functioning in a smooth way. The train's running on time, the product's moving forward. The other is more of a punitive or a punishment. So that's more like, you could say, civil law and criminal law, to keep it simple. So in the context of good work, I would argue that this part of it, okay, what I would call in my own notes, I've referred to it as a system of rules designed to keep order, okay? The order, that's not enough. That would be my argument. So in other words, order, if you think of like the heart monitor, the doctor, right? You have the EKG machine like this, okay? This is a flat line. Flat line is when the heart stops. When the heart stops, you're dead. So order to me is just flat. It's not enough. This is just what we might say in English, the slang would be called empty suit. Do you have something like this in Japan? How might we say that? The empty suit is like, okay, I come to my job, I punch it in, I'm looking at the clock, when am I done? When can I go home? Enough. And you just do this every day. I'm sure you've seen colleagues in law like this, right? Just, put on the shirt, take the bag, go to work, empty suit. There's nothing here. As Henry David Thoreau, another great philosopher from my region of the world, said, hollow men lead lives of quiet desperation. What this concept means, similar to empty suit, the hollow man, there's no soul, there's no depth, there's not the personality. So it's just, another way you could say a coder is like the shell, right? The shell. That's it. There's nothing in, there's no substance. And part of what's so important, especially in something as square or as flat as law can be, okay, arts, music, education, business, these are a little bit more interesting, and they can be. You have to fight this. You have to fight it all the time. You have to be willing to think of new directions and new ways. And in my mind, and maybe I'm wrong, but this is the way I'm seeing it from what I'm learning about good work, is this way is bad work. It's not really investigating the truth. It's not seeking deeper meaning. And law is the type of vocation where you can really have an impact. Like education, like business, art, music, these are great examples. You can really make a difference with the way you approach it. So the same guy who could come in every day and just do the work could say, well, wait a minute, what if I volunteered sometime? What if I started a new business idea, maybe in the community that could help? There are many opportunities. You have a circle. So the way you could look at a circle, and I think work is like that, you can look at the destination. Or you can look at the journey. From my perspective, it's no contest. This one is really the way to go. Of course, this is important. How do I get that client's project complete? How do I finish it? How do I get paid? How do I take care of that? But if you're not involved and participating, using multiple intelligence concepts, beyond simply writing, typing in the computer and hand in the paper, you're not really getting the experience. You're not really at a level of good work. Okay, and this is just my opinion. I mean, we're interpreting this now, and please share yours. Maybe I'm wrong. But if you're simply following the path, so we would say A to B is maybe a way to say it in English. So you start here at A. Okay, you have a project you have to complete, you have a certain amount of time, a certain budget, and you need to deliver it, you get to B. What many people would do is just, and they're done. What I would recommend is to think about the entire experience, both internally and externally. How it impacts others. I mean, as an example, say another way of saying it, another philosopher that you probably like knowing France, Descartes, he said, the unexamined life is not worth living. He's right. I would say the unexamined life, just plugging along, is bad work.
Now actually we're thinking about that, about art, how to use art for the effect for the world. So like business way and own self is different by artist. So maybe by artist I don't know, like good work or not. For me, maybe good work, but not so like effect for someone else. Maybe sometimes, but not so much. I mean, amount. So, but if the different way to use, maybe like different edge to use, like art, but different kind of art. So like now, that's why I'm like try to do, and I need support, and like Yukari and also Dr. Sakai also like help to think about. So try to. So maybe Yukari kind of like have idea though. She knows so many like the business project before, like maybe some like business good work. Like we are just they talk about that. Like she explained to me like Coca-Cola and like SoftBank, like kind of like so. Maybe she has interest in like example.
This was one of their top advertising slogans, right?
Yeah.
So what you called earlier, Kotaro, sponsorship or sponsor, we have to think about the money, how it comes, where it goes, is it being used in a good way? So please follow up. What do you think?
I think it really depends on whether it comes up as a good work or not. For example, one of the power plant that the company used to work for is notoriously famous worldwide right now, Fukushima, and I used to work for GE, so it was supplying a lot of energy to the Japan market and definitely supported to create the Japan industry. However, after the earthquake, is it a good work or not? So for 20 to 30 years, it was definitely the good work, but after the earthquake, it's not. So,
Sorry.
is it how do we define good work?
I think this is the fundamental struggle of work itself, because it can go either way.
Right.
I mean, if we could do away with work and just have fun, I'd sign up for that. I, for one, am not a huge fan of work. I think it's overrated. But that's a perfect example, you know?
So for many years, a lot of people worked for that project and that power plant, believing that it is definitely the power of Japan. However, after the earthquake, it's not. So
there's a huge movement now in my state. There's a Plymouth nuclear power plant in southeastern Mass, and it's the only one in our whole state, and it's the same exact technology, and that fight is going on right now.
but there are quite many similar technology that have been adopted in Japan.
Yes.
For example, the 5 nuclear power plants in Fukushima Daiichi were from GE and the same technology. And most of the eastern Japan is utilizing the project, the technology. So we have over 50 power plants in Japan, and that's also exported to outside the United States, including Korea, China, Turkey, India. See? So is it a good work? But it definitely brought a lot of profit to Japan. Not only to GE, but to Japan. Right.
So one question might be, how can, say for example, the United States, and you've lived in both, so you may have great ideas in this area, improve their contributions to the world in a good work context? maybe the same question also for Japan. How?
If Fukushima can provide a solution to clean up the nuclear power plant's mess, then that's going to be the good work of Fukushima for the rest of the world. Yeah, but I think most of the people who's working at Fukushima right now is going to the same direction, same vision, trying to solve the issue. It depends on who you are talking to, I think. And also those people who want to improve the situation, I believe that they're going to the same direction, but oftentimes that their result is also evaluated whether it's a good work or not. I think it's the same because the result oftentimes will influence whether what you're doing is good work or not. People are facing the right direction, in the direction,
Like
but
he
oftentimes
doesn't talk about results.
result may affect how
Yeah,
they
yeah, I
believe,
understand.
how they feel about it. Because Fukushima's, we don't know the result yet.
It's a really potent example because this is one of the most controversial industries in the world right now. I know Germany is really struggling with it, for example,
Right.
because they pledged to get rid of nuclear. So, yeah, does anybody else have an opinion or an idea related to this? This is a really, really good idea. So maybe we need some type of quantifiable mechanism that there could be a measure at a destination point, or at least after a certain number of years, to see, is it working? Well, I mean, I think the reason, from my perspective, that the nuclear power example is so profound, the largest atrocity in the history of the planet Earth was committed by my country against your country, which was Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the bombing and killing of many people and destroying both cities.
Yeah, that was bad work.
But the technology itself, when it was designed, had a good purpose in mind. So I think this could be a very interesting path for continuing this research, or maybe even opposing it, maybe even a critique of this work in saying, have you heard, for example, this phrase, maybe it's biblical in nature, but so maybe we even step back to a more fundamental question, which is risky, but we could think about, can work be good? Is the nature of work that it's ultimately leading to a bad result? Is the very concept of work infinitely corruptible such that it can't get to a good result at the end? Work itself, the nature of work, the fundamental construct of work, is it possible to make it good? This could be a really interesting area to explore in the further research. So you're almost talking about it as a mathematical formula.
I think I like that idea.
This is really interesting. So you're saying, for example, I mean, I'm not a mathematician or an artist, but so you're looking at, I guess what I would be calling earlier maybe destination or result, maybe result. So in this terrific example, we have maybe atomic energy, nuclear power, and then what's done with that in the workplace, and then what is the result? And in this case, we don't know. It's still an open question. It's a common one in the U.S.
Books is about work.
Just about work.
About work.
So I guess the problem I would have with that is it's easy to be unified in a workplace, but achieving a negative result. I mean, the most common example I think of, for example, is that of war. You can have everybody agreeing and going in the same direction, but that direction could be violence, destruction, genocide. I think our country is a great example. USA, we say home of the free, land of the brave. Those are two of the biggest lies you'll ever hear. The United States of America was built on slavery and genocide. So those founding fathers, and the Constitution is very well written. It's a beautiful document. I'm an attorney and I care about it and I take an oath and I'm an officer of the court. But in some ways, even though it's a unified vision, is it really pure or true in the way that I'm envisioning good work? And I think one change that could be made, and in law I think it's important, what's wrong with a little truth? Why not make that a priority? But why not make that part of what good work is about? So not just marching with the same purpose. Like I see people in the subway here and they're just marching. But where are they going? What are they really doing? To me it's like a lot of people are just zombies. Sleep deprived, working too hard, exhausted, falling asleep on the train. This is not okay.
I strongly agree. Yes, zombie.
And I think especially in the context of organizational management, business, certainly teaching, e-learning, the MOOCs and these concepts, this is critical. I think a lot of people now are looking for new solutions. A law firm is a good example. We talked about it. You said, I don't want to work for the big firm, right? You have 8 lawyers that work at your firm, okay? This is a good example. So maybe new concepts are coming out in the context of good work, which might be, I don't like a big corporation. I mean, Fujitsu, okay, maybe it's really good, and they've been good to you, but it's not for everybody, right? So some people may say, maybe I want to start my own company. These folks are often called, in the US slang, we call these people disruptors. They're people that say, wait a minute, maybe the current system isn't working. Let's do it another way. Let's take a risk. Let's take a gamble, be an entrepreneur. Of course, a French word, entrepreneur, but this is maybe a different way. And I think many people, in fact, everybody here is doing that, right? I mean, the e-learning idea is unique. This is taking an old company, you said you've been there 40 years, in a new way. You're doing all kinds of this work, Dr. Sakai. I mean, collaborating with all these other folks in different fields, letting a crazy American guy talk in your room, organizational management theories, combining science as well as liberal arts, multidisciplinary approach, and so forth. Music and business, law and business development, art. So one option, and I guess the reason that I'm here, is there are ways to do it in the US. You probably know this better than many people, as do you, from working there, as do you. But one option is to maybe what we'd call, I guess, in other contexts, reverse engineering. So you have the end result. So we're kind of reversing the processes here. You have the result, and then you go back and figure out how you want to set it up. So one example. So Kotaro, are you familiar with Prezi or PowerPoint? These, you have like a slide and you come up and like, Now, even though I'm a big proponent of technology, and I told Manatsu students when we lectured at Tohoku University of Art and Design, don't use these PowerPoints because something can break. Of course you can use it sometimes, but don't just use it as a tool, not as a crutch. right? Makes sense? So tool, not crutch. Crutch is like, you break your leg and you need it. So you can set it aside. You still need a good presentation. You still need the ability to communicate your message. So Kotaro said, this isn't really working. So he's come up with a new concept which is called Daru Zen. So it combines a creative element, a presentation element, and it's a way that's three-dimensional. So you can move it in different ways. This is a good example. Another example is Minatsu. So what Minatsu did is said, look, I'm an artist, I'm an educator, I've been doing this a long time. When Fukushima happened, she said there's a lot of people in Japan, especially the children, who are in pain. They need a level of healing. And it's true. So her way is, what about taking art and using that in a therapeutic way for these people? So using it as a form of therapy. And part of what's great about that, just a quick aside, both my parents are psychologists. I'm the oldest of four. Both psychologists, educational psychologists, both doctors of educational psychology. So when you think of traditional therapy in the context of the US, you have the image of the person comes to the couch, and then you have the, maybe the guy has a pipe. So, tell me about your feelings. But this is not good either, this way. It's not interactive. It's not participatory. And it doesn't have that cycle described before in the law context of mentor and mentee. The two-way learning. So, these types of ideas do have possibilities in the US. No, what I'm saying is the concept of entrepreneurship, in my mind, but I think I'm taking it maybe even a little further. I'm saying that this may be a critical way to control the good work. Now, not easy. I mean, it's not an easy way to go, but I mean, starting a business in terms of music and business and this consulting, or starting art therapy work, or these other projects, or working at a small firm instead of the big firm. More and more people are doing this. So maybe they say the traditional corporation, and it can still work, Fujitsu can work, and there are companies that do it well. Maybe this idea is shifting, and people are thinking more about, in computing, for example, we would call it open source. So you have the closed system, or you have an open source. A great example is the MOOC, this concept. They have it in Stanford University, Harvard, some of these. This is massive online open course. The whole world can learn. E-learning. Okay, this is another example where you're working on cutting edge stuff. Okay, these are new ways to approach the problems of work. But it remains to be seen. Is this opening up of these types of opportunities? And of course, the internet is a big one. Better ability to travel, with faster methods to get to different places. The global society. There are new ways to really look at the work component. I think the good is not that complicated, right? I mean, a 3-year-old can say, okay, it's good or bad. You're angry, you kick your dog, it's bad. You're angry and you say, okay, I'll take a walk around the block and then pat the dog on the head, maybe it's good. So we have an expression also not too far from Chicago, up from the racetrack, Indianapolis. For any car racing fans, I'm not one, but we say where the rubber meets the road. So that's where it really matters, where the learning happens, where the new theories in law happen that really impact the world. In music, when I get it is, I go to a lot of concerts, and I'm not a classical person, although I've seen some. I call it the tingle in the spine. There's sometimes in a live performance, it can happen in theater, opera, where you actually feel it. You actually feel it, like there's a tingle. And that's what's exciting, I think, at least theoretically, about this good work idea. When does it really happen? You might say, like, when does the magic happen? Art is the same way, and your point is good, Minatsu. Each artist has a different perspective. Each person who's observing art looks at it differently. For example, and you went to the Louvre, right, when you were in France? So the most famous painting arguably in the world, although we can fight over it, is the Mona Lisa. It's one of the least interesting paintings you'll ever see in your life. You'll stand in line for 45 minutes. You'll go there and you're like, eh. But if you cross the hall, there's a Donatello room. There's, who's the guy that did the 4 Seasons of Women with Fruit? That was really interesting. It was like...
Botticelli.
Botticelli. Now the Botticelli room in the Louvre, yes. Skip the Mona Lisa, just see it on the way by. It's not that great. So, I'm going a little bit off topic, I think, as my mind often can do. But the point is, there are opportunities, I think, for partnership, for creativity, for team building, in the context, I should say, of good work. I'm really in the early stages of exploring the good work ideas. Minatsu really brought it to me at Kotoru. I didn't really know a lot about it. But in terms of what I'm doing with law, I try to at least do more good than bad, right? National Lawyers Guild, or NLG, is actually a union of lawyers. It was founded in 1937. The construct is human rights. We have our own constitution. But the main premise is law, you have rights or responsibilities, right? But you also have property. Property is, for example, ownership. So in intellectual property, right? So one example is, let's see, one example is compassionate advocacy for a better world, and then at the end it says SM. Okay, you know SM, right? Okay, tell us about SM. Start maybe with TM, and then we can get to SM. So TM is trademark. Okay. SM is service mark. So this is one way of branding what we do, right? I'm sure you have something. This is probably an example. Shaping tomorrow with you. This is a Fujitsu concept. The intellectual property is most likely protected. Okay. So from the US perspective, more and more folks are looking to start businesses and maybe protect their ideas. This is maybe the business side, okay, or the property rights side, intellectual property. I bought a house, I pay my mortgage, it's property. Dr. Sakai publishes a book, I buy it, it's my property. This way of approaching the world often could be called capitalist. It's about the money. As an old friend once said, ain't nothing funny but the money. Okay. This is what's driving most work. For me, and maybe this isn't very popular in many corners of the world, this is not a high priority from my perspective. It matters. You have to feed yourself and take care of your family and try to live a good life. As they say in the Japanese Constitution, a humane and cultured life, I think is a rough translation in Article 25. So this is more of a, we might say, more of a socialist, Japan has a lot of these ideas, a socialist interpretation of law. Now, easier said than done. I mean, as we know, right? It's really hard to talk about this. It's even harder to have it work, because you do have to have a balance there to achieve good work. So what we do is, and it's a volunteer organization, okay? It's not paid. This is like a section of pro bono work for me. So the National Lawyers Guild is, and there's also affiliates worldwide, including I think here in Japan. We'll find out more about that. The main people that the Lawyers Guild works for, and I'm with the Massachusetts chapter in Boston, okay, but there are branches, San Francisco, New York, all over the U.S. We really look to workers, okay, especially people that like clean the floor, clean the hotel, might say like service work, low-level service work. Maybe not high business class folks, but low-level work. Prisoners, immigrants, or those that don't have the legal status, those who are politically unpopular, political prisoners, for example.
Okay.
So maybe speak out against the government, this type of thing. The U.S., we have Bill of Rights, you know this one probably, and there are 10. The most important, arguably, and I could go through them, but it would take too long, but probably the first, the fourth, and the fifth. And just briefly, this is free speech, as well as assembly and the practice of religion. You can do what you want, say what you want, you can talk about it. 4 is protections against unreasonable searches or seizures. 4th Amendment. So for example, the police need a warrant. They can't just say, okay, Minato, I want to see what's in your pocket and then take a look. No. 5th is a little bit more philosophical, but that's due process, both procedurally and as applied, meaning you get a fair trial. Okay, so these really are the ones maybe we focus on in our work. Due process, so that the procedure is fair. There are 2 categories, which I'm sure you know: procedural, and then what we call substantive or substantive. So, in other words, the shape, how it works, the structure, and then what's inside. So not just that the system is fair, but the result is fair too. specific example quickly, and I know even here that we all know this now for history has a different, like Fukushima, certain words mean something. Anybody want to tell me about that who isn't in the US or been there? It was on the news here in Japan. I saw it at the Capsule Hotel in Osaka.
アメリカもともと人種差別が非常に問題になっていた国なんですけど、今現在でもそういうことが起きていると。
So, briefly, police in Missouri, a white guy, killed a black guy, young, 18. And what we call it is this area of litigation and law, of which I do a lot. It's called police misconduct. It's protected by the federal statute called 1983. U.S. law has federal, it's a federal system, and then state. So the big one, and then the little one. So we use litigation to fight this activity. So in my town of Boston, last week, there was a march in support of the people of Missouri. We say Missouri, that's the pronunciation when you're down there. You know that from Illinois, right? Missouri, even though it's not spelled that way. There were 1,400 people marching in the streets, demonstrating against police violence. Just practice be a form of good work. That's the work of the National Lawyers Guild. And the main ways that I participate, like I wasn't there now, so all those people who were arrested and beaten by the police in Boston, maybe there were like, I think around 46 or so. I have to look at the notes. Lawyers volunteer to go into court and try to get the people out of jail. Say, look, you know, it's just politics. They didn't hurt anybody. Let them go. And if the people were hurt, then maybe do litigation against the police. This working group is called the Mass Defense Committee. My role is very small with this group. I'm often in court and working on other projects, so I don't do a lot with it. But my colleagues did a great job this past week. They got everybody out of jail except for 2 people. And these 2, one is considering a bigger suit. And once you give away your rights, they're gone. So you can't sue after the fact. This is the Mass Defense Committee is what it's called. There's also another committee called the Litigation Committee. And I'm participating in this. I just spoke in Chicago, actually in Illinois in September at the national conference. We're the first in the country in Boston to do this. So this was one of those ideas, a bunch of lawyers had some ideas that came together. The Litigation Committee, we decided, wait a minute, even though we're not a law firm in its official capacity, we're lawyers. Some of us are smart, maybe not me, but there's people smarter than me, mentors. Said, why don't we take any issues that other attorneys or other firms are dealing with and litigate under the umbrella of the National Lawyers Guild, and then the money recovered we give back to the NLG and to the victims who in law, and you know how this is said, we say made whole. So it's like a reparation, you know, the money comes back. One other committee briefly that I'm involved with, and there are a few, every year we have a gala. Hopefully someday you'll come to Boston, I can show you around. Minatsu comes at least once a year, sometimes twice, and does a lot of good work over there. There's an annual event, like a fundraising event, and I'm often one of the MCs or the auctioneers. In fact, when we had Chomsky as our guest,
Wow, we had Chomsky.
yeah, I was so excited to see that. I have a photo I'll have to send you of Nomen.
ああ、それでいいな。
So these are the kind of folks that are involved. These are really kind of radical thinkers, new ways of looking at the world or old ways, but more than simply, going along the same way, new ideas. So I do that. The other one is called the Lawyer Referral Service. And I'm curious to ask a question about this. We abbreviate as LRS. Not unique to the NLG, but the LRS is an organization. There's a team of lawyers we get together, and lawyers have practice areas. So for example, intellectual property, which we often abbreviate to IP law, like information technology would be IT. Contracts is common, real estate, family law, criminal defense. It mirrors here in Japan. If you look at the different laws, the same. But, so we'll list what categories we have competency in this group. And then people call a hotline and they say, okay, my wife just left me and I need a divorce. I have to deal with the children. Can you help me? So we often will do a reduced fee. Lawyers charge too much, as we all know. We talked a little bit about this. My bill rate is $325 an hour for the more complex projects, but often I only charge lower, like $275. And then sometimes in certain situations, and I can't do it all the time, I might even go less in terms of a reduced fee. So this is another way in which we help the community, but also every time I take a case, I donate 15% if it's over a certain percentage, or 10%, as we were talking about in a different context earlier, back to the NLG organization to continue the projects that we work on. And the projects are often housing. There's a lot of homeless in the USA. There are a lot of hungry kids in the US. I mean, you know this in Chicago. There's a lot of violence. When I mentioned the Bill of Rights, the most controversial from my perspective is the Second Amendment. This is a right to bear arms. This means with a proper license you can have a gun. This is a very stupid idea, but there are many people in the United States that feel strongly, including the National Rifle Association, who feel the government is bad, we need a gun to protect. So we often have strong opinions, and sometimes they're not popular, but this is maybe a way in which we try to do some good work. So a little primer on the NLG, kind of a side topic, but an organization I really care about and do as much as I can with.
日本もそうですよね。
日本が多分プロボノの時間を置いて
Maybe he just said in Japan's lawyer had to concentrate on pro bono more.
Oh. So maybe this would be a great example of a good work opportunity where you could maybe write a position paper which we could co-author. So maybe you put your name on it or other colleagues that you trust, and we present it to the bar in Japan and do it. The reason I'm mentioning this, I met a fellow the last time I was here in Japan at Kwansai Gwakin University. Benatsu was with me. And when he was a student in Cambridge, Massachusetts, many years ago, he was talking about juries and bringing that idea to Japan. Now, juries in Japan are still not common, but they're out there, and so this idea has come. So one possibility for good work could be an international collaboration of two lawyers discussing the importance of pro bono work And it could be a fascinating paper because you could research, okay, what do they do in the European Union? What do they do in the Middle East? What do they do in Africa? You know, the different lawyers. You could get as big or as small as you want. But this type of project is what I live for. This is what really drives me. It's what I'm passionate about, is the sharing of intercultural ideas, taking it in new directions. And that's why I've been so lucky with Minatsu, with Kotaro, to be involved at the ground level of some of these projects. Maybe they're not the most lucrative types of projects, but art heals the world, music heals the world. This is more important. And maybe I'm naive, but my feeling is if you follow your passion, then this stuff can come along over time. And generally, in my experience, that's been true. Lawyers get paid 3 ways in the US, I think similar to Japan. We talked about this. Yes.
Before we finish, he has a question
Yes.
about Fukuoka. Fukushima.
Okay.
Bad.
Yes.
And good.
Yes.
After Tohoku earthquake, good concept is changed.
Yes. Yes.
And what is a real good concept is, I think, in this book.
Yes.
And you,
Yes.
good.
What is good out
What
of
is
that?
good, yes.
I'm going to answer it in a very unusual way, if it's okay with you and doesn't bother anyone.
Bad. After
Yes.
Tohoku earthquake.
But maybe in 10 years and 50 years, that may gonna change.
Yes.
We never know. How about Chernobyl?
Yeah.
Chernobyl was bad, I guess. Always.
Always bad.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Well, I was gonna answer the question in a very strange way, which is, but I don't have an internet connection. If anyone has an internet connection, I'll answer. You have one? Will you just type in Fukushima from emails that I've sent?
You just sent an email.
You gave
4 days ago. Just type in. Okay. Just check your emails from me. Right here, Fukushima. Okay. I'm going to answer your question this way. We talk about sometimes when there are natural disasters, okay, or really, really bad stuff happens. There's a certain fascination we often call in the US the train wreck theory. So it's horrible, but you can't look away. So I'm going to answer it 2 ways. One, and I talked about Hiroshima. In 2009, I went to Hiroshima. I didn't make it all the way to Nagasaki. I ran out of time, but I'm going to get there. And I went to the dome, which is still there as a monument. And I cried for a long time. This is the worst. It's not even bad, it's beyond bad. This is the worst that one people can do to another people. And if you see that river in Hiroshima, and I cross that river to get a different vantage point on the downtown, and right away, in that very first block, and you can go there, it's there, you can go there and look, I saw one of the largest American flags, you know, the Stars and Stripes, 50 here, 13 here, the amount now after Hawaii, the last one, the original colonies. And I don't know how to say this, but you know, it blew my mind. I couldn't comprehend. How could this and this, as you said, coherence, how could they coexist? So I went to the guy in the shop, and I don't know Japanese, and I asked him, how can you possibly have this? You should be burning this. And he said, I like your country. It's not you that did it. This was not your decision. It's a context. This is the larger context. This was a bad decision in a war. But we have to look at it in a broader context. And I think we can apply it that way. Whether you look, for example, in Rwanda, you have Hutu and Tutsi. Okay? I notice it a lot with Vietnam. My uncle fought in Vietnam in the war. But I've been to Vietnam, I have many friends in Vietnam, and we discuss it. So part of it is just talking about it. What does this mean? No one has an exact answer. Okay? But try to understand it, communicate it, and talk it through. I mean, the discussion that you generated with this is brilliant and fascinating to see the different perspectives. Kodoro had good ideas, they're different, to talk about it. So I'll close with this to answer the question. And when I mentioned the train wreck, when I was on the train coming from Yamagata down to Tokyo to your office, okay, first time, never been here, came down. We went through Fukushima. So as an American guy, I had a little bit of a train wreck type fascination. I wanted to see it. What is the devastation? I mean, we see pictures on TV and it's scary, you know. We had our own smaller one in the USA, which was similar, which was Hurricane Katrina. And, you know, then there was like Hurricane Sandy. There was an earthquake in Nagano just a few days ago. So this stuff is real, and the decisions we're making right here affect people totally across the world. China's dirty coal air, as bad as nuclear is, the China dirty coal air. You see people with masks walking around, they can't breathe here. So this is really fundamental and the most important to me of anything. Daring you to dance in the glory of her possibilities. Failure dims, yet strengthens resolve to forever remaining open to the light. The light? The light. And that's it. And it was 16 November 2014 on the Toshibasa 136 Shinkansen westbound. So maybe not an answer, but that's what I try to do. Maybe look at it a different way. Maybe I'll just quickly end with the beginning. I just had a few thank yous, which I wrote down. And probably can't see. Maybe. I wanted to first thank you, Manatsu. As a distinguished scholar, a holder of an O1 visa of extraordinary artistic ability, which, unlike many categories, including music and education, it's really, really hard to get it as an artist. Congratulations and thank you. To Tara Morita, the founding partner and chief technology officer of Daruma the Factory, Inc., and gracious host and translator. And to your esteemed colleague, Dr. Sakai, thank you for opening your life and your work and your heart to us. To Meiji University, to guests here, I mean, it really is big to come and check this out, and thank you. It's an honor to meet all of you. For those we'll meet in the future here in Japan and the wonderful nation of Japan itself, we learn so much from your culture every time. I know when I was, and I'll say it wrong, but Asakusa? Asakusa. So there were 2 Buddhist statues there, and I took a picture of both.
Yeah, Kunio took us there.
Yes, with Kunio. And one was mercy on the right side, and on the left was wisdom. And when I think of good work, to me, that's a good place to start. Is mercy and wisdom. So I'm talking too much. I'm happy to be quiet and listen, and thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. めちゃくちゃすごいですよ。入っていけるの。
素晴らしい。
これはもうすごいね。今日は方角発表しましょう。
But this one, look at this. This place.
I've never been to here.
Bauhaus.
Bauhaus, yes.
Don't remember me?
Yeah, all right. Don't worry about that guy. They did it right. It's really big.
アイスクリーム大好きなんです。ドアが閉まります。閉まる扉にご注意ください。
Okonomiyaki on a stick. Never saw this one before. Toast to Cuneo. Cuneo, thank you for everything. What a fantastic day, even though we were tired. Sometimes better to make your own movie.
Where you lost, I thought.
Oh, no, not too.
Or something happened in your stomach.
I wasn't feeling too well, but I'm okay. Kunio, thank you. Arigato.
This is video.
Enjoyable trip. Oh, this one.
ご出発のお客様にご案内申し上げます。ご搭乗締め切り時刻にお済ませのお客様は、
Kunio, thank you again.
出発の1時間前には搭乗口でお待ちいただきますようお願い申し上げます。
Thank you. How do you say it? Sayonara?
ペースト状のものはジッパー付きビニールジャケット、航空具、toothpaste, etc. up to 100 grams must be placed in a zipped plastic bag and presented to security.
电脑放入托盘中，接受安全内，并向安检人员出示，接受安全检查。
液体物の持ち込みが制限されています。100ミリリットル以下エアゾール 100g 以下
テレビで振ってるのかもしれない。